So welcome to Precision Golf. Today we're going to talk about shafts and how much influence they really have, in particular in this instance on a fairway wood from a flight point of view. So what we're going to do is look at a specifically designed fairway shaft which is designed to have a softer tip, give a little bit more kick and help the ball up in the air, and compare it against these are graphite design shafts, the VF series, which is a very stiff tip designed to bring launch and spin down. So how much influence does it really have on ball flight, and what can you expect to see between the two shafts or two types of shafts in comparison from a trajectory point of view? So going to start off hitting the stiff tip. So the VF Graphite Design's latest series, some say designed really for Tiger because he's playing it, but much more of a tour style series where it's designed to be very, very stout in the tip section, giving a really stable feel but low spin. So we'll get a bit of data with this, talk about the flight, then switch over to the softer tip shaft and see what difference it really, truly, for me, makes. So this is more along the lines of what I tend to use, so the feel's quite comfortable. So stiffer tipped shafts, there's a little less flexion at the bottom end, so essentially it holds onto the head a little bit tighter, so you get a little bit less of that bend down the bottom. So the more bend you get down the bottom, the more it adds a little bit of loft, and the higher it launches, in principle, a bit more spin. So for someone who likes a stiffer feel, something like this is going to feel a little bit more comfortable. But what does it do performance-wise? So I'm going to hit a couple of shots just to get a kind of an average-based bit of data. Make sure there aren't any weird shots in there, and then compare it. So a little low on the face, so that's going to throw the data off a bit. I'll do one more with this. Certainly as far as feel's concerned, it feels very connected through the ball. So certainly the kind of shaft you've got to work the performance out of. It doesn't necessarily feel like it gives you anything back. It more feels like it really clings onto the club head. So stops any kind of feeling of flip. So generally suits a slightly more aggressive swing style. That's a pretty solid hit. So from a flight point of view with this, I've chosen a head that's very neutral, kind of mid-launch, mid-spin, so the Ping 430 Max. So for that shot in particular, 13.5 launch, 2.8, 2.9 on spin, so it's very much a mid-launch, which I'm going to get off the head, but strongish in terms of spin profile. And we got that out of a couple of shots. First one was fairly strong as well. So it's not something that's going to feel like it helps it up in the air. Very much holds on, but just keeps the top of the flight down a little bit more. I'll switch over to the other shaft and then we can compare some of the numbers. A lot of the difference here is what feel and feedback the golfer wants. So there's an element of confidence in that. So for anyone who's got a very active, aggressive action, the last thing most of those players want to feel is flipping and kicking down the bottom end, because it feels out of control. In reality, it won't be getting out of control, but that confidence that the club's there for you to hit against is a major aspect in feeling committed to the shot and trusting it. So I'll add that data in here. And equally speaking, going to the softer tip shaft, a player that wants a little bit more help, wants a little bit more kick, that sensation that the club's helping you with it feels like you don't have to go after it and force the result out of it. So it can help a player's tempo and just that confidence stood over the shot. So I picked these two shafts because they're very similar dead weights, very similar balance points. So really, as much as possible, the only difference is that profile and stiffer tip to softer tip. So I say this is specifically fairway wood designed to get that launch angle up, get that spin up. So softer tip, more recovery, more of that bend at the bottom end, and in principle, more of that launch. So how much difference does it make? And certainly feel-wise, you get that sensation of a little bit of that kind of give, load, and kick in the downswing. So I don't feel like I've got to work hard to get the performance out of the shaft. That was a horrible swing. Let me do one more there. Not going to learn much from that one. So certainly seeing in the main, launch angle's not massively affected, spin's certainly up. So I'm going to bring that data together and then we can compare those numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out the ones that I mishit horribly to those, and then we'll pull the averages together. So between the two shafts, what we can actually see is more of a spin difference. Now, you might expect to see a little bit of a launch angle difference, but there's, being a human on the end, there are going to be marginal tolerances between the two sets of data. However, what we can see between them, same club speed within half a mile an hour, similarly 0.2 of a mile an hour ball speed. So we're getting very similar contacts with these shots, having filtered out the fat shot that I hit earlier on. So where we can see there's a difference is there's a roughly 700 revolution difference on spin. So let's say some players may see more of a launch angle differential that I've seen here, and for this particular series of shots. So if I were to do it again, I might see a marginal change in that launch angle, but we are getting a noticeable difference in spin. So what that means is the base launch angle's the same, but with the softer tip shaft, with the fairway designed one, there's a little bit more action through the bottom, which gets the head kicking through just a little bit more, and that puts a little bit more backspin on. So it's flighting up. So if we're looking at the height of it, it's not a lot, it's 11 foot higher, but it's landing 4 degrees steeper because that spin's stalling it, holding at the top and then dropping it a little bit steeper. So actually, in terms of if you're playing into a green, the fairway design shaft versus the stiff tip shaft, softer tip to stiffer tip, it's peaking a little bit higher, stalling up a little bit more and landing steeper. So essentially, going from one extreme in terms of shaft design to the other has taken me from more of a forward design, that kind of low 3000s in spin that I got off the stiffer tip, is more of a kind of a mid to stronger flight out of it, got a little bit more chase out, and the softer tip shaft, more of a forward spin. It's almost taken the 3-wood to a forward flight, but without massively changing launch angle or the loft on the head to do so. So for the same ball speed, we're seeing 7 or 8 yards more carry from the lower spin, the stronger flight profile, and then a little bit more run out again. Ultimately, you're going to use the shaft profile to try to augment someone's natural flight. So I've always been a fairly high spinner of the ball, particularly with fairway woods. My strike point is a little low and a little into the heel. So for me, the lower spin shaft keeps that flight forwards and keeps it in a stable profile and stops it getting too affected by wind and conditions. For a lower spin player, someone who doesn't add too much flight and launch, and you're looking to get extra ball flight on it, that's then where that softer tip shaft really comes into its own. It helps just to get that little bit more elevation, get that little bit more height, and keep the ball in the air a little bit longer. So there isn't a huge difference in peak height, launch angle, but we are seeing that spin differential. I say different players will see differing amounts of variation, so this is specific to my swing in this instance, but hopefully gives a bit of a picture on why we would use a particular shaft profile depending on the ball flight and feel that a player wants to see from that part of the bag.